Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished checking the atmospheric processors on mining station Kappa 7. The remote asteroid facility was supposed to be automated, but like most things in the Outer Rim, it needed constant human attention to keep running. He was the only technician assigned to this rock floating in the void, and he preferred it that way. No corporate politics, no crowds, just him and the machines. The comm system crackled to life, startling him from his routine maintenance. Emergency frequencies weren't supposed to reach this far out unless something was seriously wrong. Marcus rushed to the communications array, his boots clanging against the metal grating. "This is mining station Kappa 7 responding to emergency transmission," he spoke into the microphone. "Please identify yourself." Static filled the air for several moments before a voice came through, speaking heavily accented Standard. The speaker was clearly not human. The vocal cords produced sounds that no human throat could make, a melodic quality that reminded Marcus of singing birds mixed with the deep resonance of a cello. Please help me," the voice said, fear evident despite the alien pronunciation. "My ship is damaged. Life support failing. I am alone." Marcus quickly ran a scanner sweep of the surrounding space. Sure enough, a small vessel was drifting roughly 2 kilometers away, its hull showing signs of significant damage. Blast marks scored its surface and atmosphere was slowly leaking from multiple breaches. "I see your ship," Marcus replied. "I'm bringing you in. Prepare for tractor beam engagement." As he guided the damaged vessel into the station's small docking bay, Marcus got his first look at the craft up close. It was sleek and organic looking, unlike the angular human designs he was used to. The hull seemed to shimmer with an opalescent quality, beautiful even in its damaged state. The docking bay pressurized with a hiss, and Marcus made his way down to meet his unexpected guest. When the ship's airlock opened, he felt his breath catch in his throat. The being that emerged was unlike anything in the xenobiology textbooks. She, for the creature was clearly female, stood about his height but with a graceful, elongated build. Her skin had the same opalescent quality as her ship, shifting between pale blue and silver depending on the angle of the light. 4 arms moved with fluid precision as she steadied herself against the airlock frame. Her face was humanoid but refined, with large eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within their depths, and delicate features that spoke of an ancient and sophisticated species. What struck Marcus most, however, was not her alien beauty but the obvious terror in her expression. She looked around the docking bay like a cornered animal, her whole body trembling with exhaustion and fear. "Thank you," she said, her melodic voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I would die out there alone." "You're safe now," Marcus replied gently, noting how she flinched slightly at his movement. "I'm Marcus. What's your name?" "I am called Zephyra," she answered, then seemed to consider something before adding, "Of the Ethereal Reach." Marcus had heard of the Ethereal Reach, a distant confederation of worlds known for their advanced technology and isolationist policies. They rarely interacted with human space, preferring to keep to themselves in the far spiral arms of the galaxy. "What happened to your ship?" Marcus asked as he gestured for her to follow him to the station's medical bay. Zephyra's expression darkened and her 4 hands clenched into fists. "Pirates," she said with venom in her voice. "They destroyed my escort vessels and captured my cargo ship. I escaped in this pod, but barely." As they walked through the station's corridors, Marcus noticed how Zephyra moved with unconscious grace despite her obvious exhaustion. She seemed to glide rather than walk, her feet barely making sound on the metal floor. "You said you were alone out there," Marcus observed. "Where were you headed?" Zephyra stopped walking and turned to face him, her large eyes filled with a mixture of desperation and something else. "Shame. Perhaps I was traveling to the marriage brokers on Centauri Prime," she said quietly. "My family has arranged for me to be bonded to strengthen political alliances within the Reach. But now," she gestured helplessly at her damaged ship, "I have nothing. No dowry, no escort, no way to reach my intended." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. "Marriage brokers? You mean this is an arranged marriage?" "Of course," Zephyra replied, seeming confused by his reaction. "Among my people, marriages are always arranged by families to ensure proper genetic and political compatibility. Love, as you humans call it, is considered a dangerous emotion that clouds judgment. And if you don't make it to this arranged marriage? Zafira's shoulders sagged, and she wrapped her lower arms around herself in what Marcus recognized as a self-comforting gesture. Then I will be declared missing and presumed dead. My family will disown me to avoid the shame of a broken contract. I will become outcast, forbidden from returning to ethereal space. Marcus stared at her in shock. This beautiful, obviously intelligent being was essentially a refugee now, cast out from her own people because of circumstances beyond her control. There has to be another way, he said. Can't you contact your family? Explain what happened. You don't understand, Zafira said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. The marriage contract was signed in blood and sealed with ancient rituals. Breaking it brings dishonor not just to me, but to 7 generations of my lineage. My family would rather I be truly dead than return in failure. She suddenly dropped to her knees before Marcus, all 4 hands pressed to the floor in what he realized was some sort of supplication pose. Please, she said, her melodic voice breaking with emotion. I know we have just met and I know this is madness, but I am desperate. Among my people, any marriage bond properly witnessed is considered valid even to an alien species. If you would consent to be my husband, I could honor the spirit of my family's contract while saving us both from dishonor. Marcus stared down at the alien woman prostrating herself before him, his mind reeling. This was definitely not how he had expected his routine maintenance day to go. Zafira, he said gently, please get up. You don't need to kneel to me. She raised her head to look at him, hope and fear warring in her galactic eyes. Does this mean you will consider my proposal? Marcus helped her to her feet, noting how light and delicate she felt despite her height. I think we need to talk about this more. A lot more. But first, let's get you some food and rest. You've been through hell. As he led her toward the station's living quarters, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet, solitary life was about to become very complicated indeed. The station's mess hall had never hosted an alien guest before, and Marcus found himself oddly nervous as he prepared a meal. Zafira sat at the small table, her 4 hands folded delicately in her lap as she observed his movements with keen interest. Your food preparation rituals are fascinating, she said, her melodic voice carrying a note of genuine curiosity. Among my people, sustenance is typically provided in pre-processed forms. Very efficient but lacking in ceremony. Marcus chuckled as he heated a simple meal of protein rations and vegetables. I wouldn't call making dinner a ritual exactly, though I suppose cooking is one of those things that makes us human. Yes, Zafira said thoughtfully. I have studied human culture in preparation for possible diplomatic contact. Your species seems to find meaning in activities that my people would consider inefficient. Like what? Marcus asked, setting the plate before her along with utensils modified to accommodate her 4-handed anatomy. Zafira examined the food carefully before taking a tentative bite. Her large eyes widened in surprise. This has flavor, she said wonderingly. Complex flavor. On my world, nutrition is optimized, but taste is considered a distraction. Your people sound pretty focused on efficiency, Marcus observed, settling into the chair across from her. We must be, Zafira replied, taking another experimental bite. The ethereal reach spans 14 star systems, each with unique challenges. Survival requires precise planning and emotional discipline. There is no room for what you humans call spontaneity. Marcus studied her as she ate, noting how she moved with unconscious grace even in simple actions. But you're here asking a stranger to marry you, he pointed out. That seems pretty spontaneous. Zafira's opalescent skin shifted to a deeper blue, which Marcus was beginning to recognize as embarrassment. You are correct. I am acting in a manner my people would find incomprehensible. Perhaps proximity to humans is already affecting my judgment. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Marcus asked gently. The question seemed to catch Zafira off guard. She paused with food halfway to her mouth, considering his words. I do not know. My instructors taught that human emotional thinking leads to chaos and poor decisions, but observing you, I see someone who responded to a stranger's distress call without hesitation. You brought me aboard your station despite not knowing if I posed a threat. You prepared food for me and are treating me with kindness despite my inappropriate proposal. Maybe your instructors were wrong about humans, Marcus suggested. Perhaps, Zafira admitted. But if they were wrong about humans, what else might they have been wrong about? The question hung in the air between them as they finished eating in comfortable silence. Finally, Marcus cleared the dishes and sat back down. "Tell me about this marriage contract," he said. "What exactly would it involve?" Zephyr's hands fidgeted with the edge of the table. "Among my people, marriage is a formal alliance between families. The ceremony itself is simple, a declaration of intent before witnesses, an exchange of genetic samples for compatibility verification, and the signing of legal documents. The emotional connection that humans seem to value is not considered relevant. But you'd be stuck with me forever," Marcus pointed out. "Doesn't that concern you?" "Our lifespans are similar to yours," Zephira replied. "Perhaps slightly longer. But the marriage contract includes provisions for dissolution if the alliance fails to serve its purpose. However, an unconsummated marriage to an alien would likely be considered null by my family's legal representatives, provided it was documented properly." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "So this would basically be a marriage in name only?" Zephyr's skin shifted to an even deeper blue. Yes, I would not expect you to. That is, I understand that humans form pair bonds based on emotional attachment, and we have no such connection. I am simply asking you to help me maintain my honor and avoid exile." "What would you do after?" Marcus asked. "If we went through with this? I have not thought that far ahead," Zephra admitted. "Perhaps I could find work in human space. My people's technology might be valuable to your scientists and engineers, or perhaps I could serve as a cultural liaison, helping to bridge the gap between our species." Marcus could hear the uncertainty in her voice and realized that she truly was alone, cut off from everything she had ever known. "What about your family? Would you ever see them again?" "Not if I remain married to an alien," Zephira said quietly. "But if I return unmarried and dishonored, I would face exile or worse. At least this way. I choose my own path rather than having shame thrust upon me." The courage in her words struck Marcus deeply. Here was someone willing to give up everything she had ever known rather than accept defeat. It reminded him of the stories his grandfather used to tell about the early space colonists, leaving Earth forever to build something new among the stars. "You said you need witnesses for the ceremony," Marcus said slowly. "Who would serve that purpose out here?" Zephira looked up hopefully. "According to ethereal law, any 3 sentient beings can serve as witnesses to a marriage contract. Your station's artificial intelligence would qualify, along with any communication links to other humans." Marcus blinked in surprise. "You want to include my station's AI as a wedding witness?" "Is that acceptable to human customs?" Zephira asked anxiously. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. "Honestly, I don't think human customs have caught up with the idea of interspecies marriage yet. We'd be breaking new ground either way." "Then you will consider it?" Zephira's voice was barely above a whisper, hope evident in every syllable. Marcus stood and walked to the small viewport that looked out into space. Zephira's damaged ship was still visible in the docking bay, a reminder of how alone she truly was. Beyond that was the endless void, cold and unforgiving. He thought about his own life, years of solitude on mining stations, occasional trips to populated worlds where he never quite fit in, a future stretching ahead with more of the same. His parents had died in a transport accident when he was young, and he had no siblings. No close friends, no romantic attachments. He was almost as alone as Zephira, just in a different way. "I need to ask you something," Marcus said, turning back to face her, "and I want you to be completely honest. Is there any part of you that actually wants this beyond just avoiding dishonor?" Zephira was quiet for a long moment, her galactic eyes studying his face. "I do not understand the human concept of romantic love," she said finally. "But I find myself intrigued by you. You show kindness without expecting payment. You ask questions because you genuinely wish to understand, not to gain advantage. In the few hours since you rescued me, I have experienced more genuine concern from you than I received from my intended husband during our entire betrothal negotiation." She stood and moved closer to him, her movements graceful despite her obvious nervousness. "I cannot promise you love, Marcus Chen of the humans. But I can promise you loyalty, honesty, and respect. Perhaps in time I could learn to be the kind of companion your species values." Marcus felt something shift in his chest as he looked into her eyes. There was vulnerability there, yes, but also strength and determination. This was someone who refused to give up, who was willing to leap into the unknown rather than accept defeat. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's do it." Zephyra's skin suddenly shifted to a brilliant silver, and her four hands pressed together in what he realized was a gesture of gratitude. "You truly mean this?" "I mean it," Marcus confirmed. "But we're going to do this right. If you're going to be my wife, even temporarily, then you deserve a proper ceremony, not just a legal formality." "I do not understand," Zephyra said, tilting her head in confusion. Marcus smiled. "Leave that to me. Let me show you what humans do when we think something is important." Marcus spent the next morning transforming the station's observation deck into something resembling a wedding venue. He had never been particularly artistic, but human ingenuity had a way of rising to challenges. Using spare maintenance materials, he created an arch from polished metal conduits and draped it with emergency blankets that caught and reflected the starlight streaming through the massive viewport. Zephyra watched his preparations with fascination, her skin shifting through various shades of blue and silver as her emotions changed. "This is truly unnecessary," she said for the third time, though her tone suggested she was pleased rather than annoyed. "The legal requirements are quite simple." "Maybe for your people," Marcus replied, adjusting the height of the makeshift altar he had constructed from storage containers. "But humans have been making ceremonies out of important moments for thousands of years. It's how we mark the things that matter." "And this matters to you?" Zephyra asked quietly. Marcus paused in his work and looked at her directly. "You're trusting me with your future, Your Honor. Maybe your life." "Yeah, it matters to me." The observation deck's communication panel chimed, interrupting the moment. Marcus activated the display, expecting routine maintenance updates from the station's AI. Instead, he found himself looking at the weathered face of Captain Sarah Morrison, commander of the mining consortium's patrol vessel Resolute. "Marcus, we picked up some unusual energy signatures in your sector," Morrison said without preamble. "Long-range scans show what looks like a damaged vessel in your docking bay." "Everything all right out there?" Marcus felt Zephyra tense beside him. He could see the fear creeping back into her expression, the same terror she had shown when her ship had first limped into his station. "Everything's fine, Captain," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. "I responded to a distress call and brought in a survivor." "What kind of survivor?" Morrison's eyes narrowed. "The energy signature doesn't match any known human vessels." Marcus hesitated. Captain Morrison was a decent officer, but she followed regulations to the letter. Finding an alien on a mining station would trigger protocols that could complicate everything. "An ethereal," Marcus said finally. "Female traveling alone. Her ship was attacked by pirates." Morrison's expression shifted to one of sharp interest. "Ethereals don't travel in human space, ever, and they certainly don't travel alone. What's the real story here, Marcus?" Before Marcus could answer, Zephyra stepped into view of the communication screen. Morrison's eyes widened as she took in the alien woman's appearance. "Captain Morrison," Zephyra said formally, her voice taking on the precise diction Marcus was beginning to recognize as her diplomatic training. "I am Zephyra of the Ethereal Reach. I seek asylum in human space following the destruction of my escort fleet by unknown attackers." "Asylum?" Morrison repeated. "Ethereals have never requested asylum from humans before. This is way above my clearance level. I'm going to need to contact Fleet Command." "Captain, wait," Marcus interjected. "There are complications." He quickly explained Zephyra's situation, carefully omitting the marriage proposal. Morrison listened with growing concern, occasionally asking questions about the pirate attack and Zephyra's damaged ship. "This is unprecedented," Morrison said when Marcus finished. "An ethereal noble seeking asylum. Pirate attacks this far out, diplomatic implications. I'm going to need to bring Zephyra in for formal debriefing. Fleet Command will want to hear her story directly." Zephyra's skin had gone pale, shifting to an almost translucent white. "Captain Morrison," she said carefully, "if I may ask, what would such a debriefing entail?" "Standard protocol for first contact situations," Morrison replied. "Quarantine, medical examination, extensive interviews. Nothing harmful, but it could take weeks or months depending on what the diplomats decide." Marcus saw Zephyra's four hands clench into fists. Weeks or months of bureaucratic delays would destroy any chance of fulfilling her marriage contract in time. She would face exactly the dishonor and exile she was trying to avoid. "Captain," Marcus said, "what if she wasn't seeking asylum? What if she was here for other reasons?" Morrison raised an eyebrow. "What kind of other reasons?" Marcus took a deep breath. What if she was here for a wedding? The silence that followed stretched uncomfortably long. Morrison stared at the screen as if she hadn't heard correctly. "Marcus," she said slowly, "please tell me you're not saying what I think you're saying." "Zephyrah and I are getting married," Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. "Today, actually. That's why she's here." Morrison's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, and finally something that might have been amusement. "You're marrying an alien? Is there a regulation against it?" Marcus asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment, clearly accessing her database of mining consortium rules. "Actually, no, there isn't. Interspecies marriage falls under personal affairs, not consortium jurisdiction." "But Marcus, this is insane. You've known her for what, a day?" "Love doesn't follow a schedule, Captain," Marcus replied, surprised by how easily the lie came. Beside him, Zephyrah looked startled by his words, her skin shifting to a warm golden hue. She started to speak, then seemed to think better of it. "Well," Morrison said finally, "congratulations, I suppose. But this doesn't change the fact that she's in human space without proper documentation. Marriage or no marriage, I'm going to need to file a report." "Of course," Marcus agreed. "But as my wife, she'd have legal status in human space, right? She wouldn't need to go through the asylum process." Morrison sighed. "Technically, yes. Marriage grants citizenship rights, but the bureaucrats are still going to want answers about how an ethereal noble ended up in our sector." "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Marcus said. "For now, you're welcome to witness the ceremony. We could use an official observer." Morrison stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head with what might have been admiration. "You know what, Marcus? I've been in space for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this. Count me in. The Resolute will be there in 6 hours." After Morrison signed off, Zephyrah turned to Marcus with wonder in her galactic eyes. "You lied to protect me," she said softly. "You called it love when you knew it was merely a legal arrangement." Marcus shrugged, feeling slightly embarrassed. "Morrison's a good officer, but she's also a romantic. She'll protect what she thinks is a love story better than she'd protect a legal loophole. And you understand her well enough to manipulate her emotions?" "I prefer to think of it as social engineering," Marcus replied. "Humans are complicated creatures. Sometimes you have to work with their emotions instead of against them." Zephyrah was quiet for several moments, studying his face with an intensity that made Marcus slightly uncomfortable. "I am beginning to understand why the Ethereal Council considers humans dangerous," she said finally. "Dangerous how?" "Your species doesn't simply adapt to circumstances," Zephyrah explained. "You reshape circumstances to fit your needs. You turn disadvantages into advantages, obstacles into opportunities. Even now, when faced with bureaucratic complications that could destroy our plan, you found a way to turn them to our benefit." Marcus considered this. "Is that necessarily a bad thing?" "I don't know," Zephyrah admitted. "But it is inspiring. Among my people, we accept the circumstances we are given and find the most efficient way to work within them. But you seem to believe that circumstances themselves can be changed." "Sometimes they can," Marcus said. "Sometimes you just have to be willing to take the risk." Zephyrah's skin shifted to that warm golden hue again. "Yes," she said thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is exactly what I am doing." The next few hours passed quickly as they prepared for Morrison's arrival. Marcus finished decorating the observation deck while Zephyrah worked on her ship's computers, documenting the pirate attack and preparing the legal documents needed for their marriage. As the patrol ship Resolute docked with the station, Marcus found himself genuinely nervous. This had started as a simple act of kindness, helping someone in distress. Now it was becoming something much more complex with implications he was only beginning to understand. "Are you ready for this?" he asked Zephyrah as they watched Morrison's shuttle approach through the viewport. Zephyrah straightened, her posture becoming regal despite her simple clothing. "I am ready," she said with quiet dignity. "Thank you, Marcus Chen. Whatever happens next, you have given me hope when I had none." As they prepared to greet their guests, Marcus realized that somewhere in the past day, this had stopped feeling like just helping a stranger. Zephyrah was becoming something more, a partner perhaps, or at least someone worth protecting. The thought should have terrified him, but instead, it felt like coming alive after years of merely existing. Captain Morrison arrived with her first officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, both wearing their dress uniforms despite the informal nature of the occasion. Morrison's weathered features softened as she took in the transformed observation deck, her eyes lingering on the improvised decorations and the spectacular view of stars beyond. "Marcus, this is actually beautiful," she said with genuine surprise. "I had no idea you had this in you." "Neither did I," Marcus admitted, straightening his own hastily cleaned work clothes. He had found a clean maintenance uniform and polished his boots, but felt underdressed compared to the naval officers. Zephyra emerged from the station's quarters wearing a flowing garment she had somehow created from emergency blankets and spare fabric. The material caught the starlight and seemed to shimmer with its own inner radiance, transforming the utilitarian materials into something that looked almost ceremonial. Her opalescent skin had taken on a warm pearl color, and she moved with the fluid grace that Marcus was beginning to associate with her calmer moods. "Captain Morrison." "Lieutenant Rodriguez," Zephyra said formally, inclining her head in greeting. "Thank you for serving as witnesses to this union." Morrison studied Zephyra with professional interest, clearly trying to reconcile the diplomatic reports about the isolationist ethereals with the graceful woman before her. "The pleasure is ours, Lady Zephyra. Though I have to ask, how exactly does one conduct an interspecies wedding? Are we following human customs or ethereal ones?" "Both," Marcus replied. "We've worked out a compromise that should satisfy the legal requirements of both cultures." The station's AI chose that moment to chime in with its synthesized voice. "May I also extend congratulations to Mr. Chen and Lady Zephyra. I have prepared the necessary legal documentation and stand ready to serve as an additional witness as requested." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Your AI is a wedding witness?" "Ethereal law recognizes artificial intelligences as valid legal entities," Zephyra explained. "Among my people, the distinction between organic and synthetic consciousness is considered irrelevant for legal purposes." "Interesting," Rodriguez murmured, making notes on his datapad. "That's a significantly more progressive stance than most species take." The ceremony itself was unlike anything any of them had experienced. Marcus had researched human wedding traditions and combined them with Zephyra's explanation of ethereal bonding rituals. They stood facing each other under the makeshift arch, with the vast starfield serving as a backdrop. "Zephyra of the ethereal reach," Marcus began, following the script they had prepared. "I offer you my protection, my loyalty, and my partnership for as long as our bond serves us both." "Marcus Cheneverth and the Human Federation," Zephyra replied, her melodic voice carrying clearly through the observation deck. "I offer you my honor, my knowledge, and my devotion for as long as the stars shine above us." They exchanged simple rings that Marcus had fashioned from metal conduits, crude by most standards, but carefully crafted and polished to a warm shine. As Zephyra placed the ring on Marcus's finger, her four hands briefly covered his too, and he felt a strange warmth pass between them. "By the authority vested in me as captain of the patrol vessel Resolute," Morrison said formally, "and in the presence of these witnesses, I pronounce you husband and wife according to the laws of the Human Federation. The union is recognized under ethereal law as well," the station's AI added. "All legal documentation has been properly filed and transmitted to the appropriate authorities." As Marcus and Zephyra sealed their vows with a careful embrace, her first experience with human physical affection, alarms suddenly began blaring throughout the station. "Proximity alert," the AI announced. "Multiple vessels approaching at high velocity. Configuration unknown." Morrison was instantly in command mode, her wedding guest demeanor replaced by military precision. "How many ships?" "3 vessels, Captain," the AI replied. They matched the configuration of the attackers described by Lady Zephyra. Through the observation deck's viewport, they could see running lights approaching in the distance. The ships were sleek and predatory-looking, unlike any design in human space. "Pirates," Zephyra said, her skin shifting to a deep, angry purple. "They must have followed my ship's trail. Why would they bother?" Morrison asked, already moving toward the communication panel. "You said they took your cargo." "They took the trade goods," Zephyra replied grimly. "But they might believe I escaped with something more valuable. Ethereal technology, navigation data, diplomatic intelligence." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Or they might just want to eliminate the witness to their attack. Morrison was already contacting her ship. Resolute, this is Morrison. We have 3 unidentified hostile vessels approaching mining station Kappa 7. Prepare for combat and get us backup from Fleet Command. Captain, came the reply. They're jamming our long-range communications. We can't reach Fleet Command and they're moving to block our exit vector. Clever, Rodriguez observed grimly. They're trying to trap us here. Marcus's mind raced as he considered their options. The mining station had no weapons beyond basic mining lasers, and Morrison's patrol ship was designed for law enforcement, not military combat. Against 3 pirate vessels, they were badly outgunned. There might be another way, Marcus said suddenly. Zephyra, your ship, is it completely disabled? The hull is compromised and life support is failing, Zephyra replied, but the core systems are still functional. Why? Mining stations have industrial-grade power cores, Marcus explained quickly. If we could jury-rig a connection between your ship's systems and the station's power grid, you want to turn her ship into a weapon? Morrison asked. Ethereal energy weapons are generations ahead of human technology, Marcus said. Even a damaged ship might give us an edge. Zephyra's eyes widened with understanding. The harmonic resonance cannon. It's damaged but might function if we bypass the safety protocols and feed it enough power. How long would you need? Morrison asked. 10 minutes, Marcus replied. Maybe 15. Morrison checked her tactical display. The pirates will be in weapons range in 8 minutes. Then we'd better get started, Marcus said, already moving toward the door. Zephyra, I need you to guide me through your ship's systems. Marcus, Zephyra said, catching his arm with one of her hands. The harmonic cannon draws enormous power. Connecting it to your station's grid could overload both systems. The explosion could destroy everything within several kilometers. And if we don't try, the pirates will definitely kill us all. Marcus replied. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks. Zephyra stared at him for a moment. Then her skin shifted to that brilliant silver color he was learning meant determination. Very well, husband. Let us show these pirates what happens when they threaten a human and his wife. As they raced toward the docking bay, Morrison's voice echoed through the station's comm system. All hands, this is Captain Morrison. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Prepare for defensive action. Marcus felt a strange sense of clarity as they reached Zephyra's damaged ship. This was what humans did, he realized. They took impossible situations and found ways to turn them to their advantage. They didn't accept defeat. They redefined the parameters of success. Show me what you need, he told Zephyra as they entered her ship's cramped engine compartment. Zephyra's 4 hands moved with practiced efficiency across alien control panels, her melodic voice explaining the process in rapid technical terms. Marcus might not understand ethereal technology, but he understood engineering principles. And the concepts translated there, Zephyra said, indicating a crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light. That's the resonance chamber. If we can channel the station's power through the tertiary coupling, I see it, Marcus said, already reaching for his tools. This is going to work. As they worked frantically to complete the connection, Marcus realized that somewhere in the course of this crisis, he had stopped thinking of Zephyra as an alien who needed his help. She was his partner now, someone he trusted to have his back when everything went wrong. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt perfectly natural. The power coupling sparked dangerously as Marcus made the final connection between Zephyra's ship and the mining station's core. Warning lights flashed throughout both vessels, and the harmonic resonance chamber's crystalline structure began to glow with an increasingly intense blue-white light. Power levels at 60% and climbing, Zephyra reported, her 4 hands dancing across the alien control surfaces. The coupling is holding, but the energy feedback is causing harmonic distortions in the chamber matrix. English. Please, Marcus called over the growing hum of charging systems. The weapon will work, but probably only once before the whole system burns out, Zephyra translated. And if we miss, we won't miss, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. How do we aim this thing? Through the station's communication system, they could hear Morrison coordinating the defense. Resolute. Maintain position between the station and the lead pirate vessel. Try to draw their fire while Marcus works his magic. The first exchange of weapons fire lit up space around the station. Morrison's patrol ship was fast and well shielded, but the pirate vessels had superior firepower. Energy bolts streaked past the observation deck's windows as the Resolute weaved between the attacking ships. Target acquisition system is responding, Zephyra announced. But I need visual confirmation of the target. The resonance cannon requires precise harmonic matching to penetrate enemy shields. Marcus looked through the ship's small viewport and saw the lead pirate vessel bearing down on them, its hull scarred from countless battles. That one? Yes, but I need to analyze their shield frequency first, Zephyra said, her eyes closed in concentration as she interfaced with her ship's sensors. Their shielding is unusual. Not ethereal technology, but not human either. Stolen technology from multiple species, Marcus guessed. Pirates tend to cobble together whatever works. That might actually help us, Zephyra said, her skin shifting to a determined silver. Incompatible systems create harmonic vulnerabilities. If I can identify the resonance frequency. A massive impact shook the station as one of the pirate vessels scored a direct hit on the mining facility's superstructure. Emergency systems engaged automatically, sealing breached sections and rerouting power to essential systems. Marcus, Morrison's voice crackled through the comm. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. My ship can't take much more of this. Almost there, Marcus replied, watching the power levels continue to climb. The crystalline chamber was now so bright it hurt to look at directly, and the harmonic vibrations were making his teeth ache. Got it, Zephyra announced suddenly. Their primary shield generator is operating on a frequency that creates destructive interference with their secondary systems. If we hit them at precisely 847.3 terahertz? Do it, Marcus said. Zephyra's four hands moved across the targeting controls with fluid precision. The resonance cannon pivoted smoothly, tracking the lead pirate vessel as it maneuvered for another attack run on the Resolute. Firing, Zephyra announced. The harmonic cannon discharged with a sound unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. Not quite a scream, not quite music, but something that seemed to resonate in his very bones. A beam of coherent energy, visible as a dancing column of blue-white light, struck the pirate vessel dead center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the pirate ship's shields flickered and died. Its hull plates began to vibrate violently, and internal explosions started cascading through its structure. The vessel didn't just explode. It seemed to tear itself apart from the inside as harmonic resonance destroyed the molecular bonds holding it together. Direct hit. Morrison's voice came through the comm with obvious satisfaction. 1 down, 2 to go. But the victory celebration was short-lived. As Zephyra had predicted, the resonance cannon was completely burned out, its crystalline chamber now dark and cracked. Smoke was beginning to fill the ship's compartments as overloaded systems failed throughout both vessels. The coupling is destabilizing, Zephyra reported, her melodic voice tight with concern. We need to disconnect before the feedback destroys both ships. Marcus was already moving, his hands flying over the manual release mechanisms. But the power coupling had fused during the discharge, and the normal disconnection procedures weren't working. I can't get it loose, Marcus said, sweat beading on his forehead as he struggled with the stubborn mechanisms. The heat has welded the connectors together. Outside, the 2 remaining pirate vessels were regrouping, apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor. They were beginning to withdraw, but not before launching a final salvo of missiles at the mining station. Incoming ordnance, Morrison announced. Multiple warheads tracking for the docking bay. 30 seconds to impact. Marcus looked at the fused coupling, then at Zephyra, who was working frantically to contain the energy feedback. If those missiles hit while the systems were still connected, the explosion would be catastrophic. There's one way to disconnect it, Marcus said grimly. I can overload the coupling manually, but someone needs to be here to regulate the power flow or the whole station goes up. No, Zephyra said immediately. If you overload the coupling from this end, you'll be caught in the discharge. It will kill you. Not necessarily, Marcus replied, though they both knew he was lying. And if I don't do it, we all die anyway. Zephyra was quiet for a moment, her galactic eyes studying his face. Then she did something that surprised him. She smiled, an expression that transformed her alien features into something achingly beautiful. I am beginning to understand human stubbornness, she said. Very well. But if you are determined to sacrifice yourself, then we do it together. Before Marcus could protest, Zephyra's 4 hands were working alongside his, their movements perfectly synchronized as they prepared to manually overload the power coupling. It was a task that required two people, one to initiate the overload, one to channel the feedback safely. 20 seconds to missile impact, Morrison's voice announced. On my mark, Marcus said, his hands poised over the overload controls. Together, Zephyra agreed, her hand steady on the power regulation systems now. Marcus triggered the overload just as Zephyra redirected the energy feedback into the station's heat dissipation systems. For a brief moment, the docking bay was filled with blinding light and harmonic vibrations that seemed to shake reality itself. When the light faded, the coupling had separated cleanly, and both ship systems were automatically shutting down to prevent further damage. Through the viewport, they could see the pirate missiles detonating harmlessly against the station's emergency shields, their timing just a few seconds too late. All clear, Morrison announced. The remaining pirates are withdrawing. Nice work, you two. Marcus and Zephyra found themselves sitting on the floor of her ship's engine compartment, both breathing heavily from exertion and adrenaline. Zephyra's skin had shifted to a warm golden color, and she was looking at Marcus with something like wonder. You were willing to die to save the station, she said quietly. To save people you barely know and me, an alien you met yesterday. So were you, Marcus pointed out. Yes, Zephyra said thoughtfully. I was. Among my people, such a choice would be considered illogical, inefficient, yet it felt completely natural. Marcus studied her expression, seeing something new there, not just gratitude or respect, but a deeper understanding. Maybe your people and mine aren't as different as we thought. Perhaps not, Zephyra agreed. She reached out with one of her hands and carefully took his, her touch surprisingly warm. Marcus Chen, I think I am beginning to understand what humans call love. As they sat together in the damaged ship, surrounded by the aftermath of their desperate gamble, Marcus realized that what had started as a marriage of convenience was becoming something much more real. They had faced death together and chosen to protect each other even at the cost of their own lives. That, he thought, was a pretty good foundation for a marriage. Their ports and unexpected visitors. Captain Morrison had remained with her ship docked to the station, while engineers from both vessels worked to assess the damage from their improvised weapon system. The Resolute's medical bay had become a temporary treatment center for the minor injuries sustained during the battle. Marcus found himself spending more time with Zephyra than he had initially expected. What had begun as helping her recover from her ordeal had evolved into something that felt remarkably like companionship. She had an insatiable curiosity about human culture and technology, while her insights into ethereal science were revolutionizing his understanding of the station's systems. Your people's approach to engineering is fascinating, Zephyra said as they worked together to recalibrate the station's power grid. Her four hands moved with practiced efficiency across the human control panels, having quickly adapted to the different interface design. You build systems that are robust enough to handle unexpected modifications. Ethereal technology is far more elegant but also more fragile. We call it over-engineering, Marcus replied, watching her work with admiration. When you're stuck on a mining station light years from the nearest repair facility, you need systems that can be fixed with spare parts and creative thinking. Yes, Zephyra said thoughtfully. Your species seems to have evolved under the assumption that nothing will work exactly as planned. Usually a safe assumption, Marcus agreed. Life has a way of throwing curveballs. Zephyra tilted her head and the gesture he was learning meant confusion. Curveballs? Marcus smiled and spent the next few minutes explaining baseball, which led to a discussion of human recreational activities, which somehow evolved into Zephyra describing the meditation gardens of her homeworld. These conversations had been happening more frequently, casual exchanges that felt natural despite their vast cultural differences. Marcus, Morrison called through the station's comm system. I need you and Zephyra in the command center. We've got incoming traffic. They made their way to the station's main control room where Morrison was studying long-range sensor displays with a concerned expression. 2 ships approaching, she announced. One's human, a diplomatic courier from the colonial administration. The other, ethereal, Zephyra said quietly, her skin shifting to a pale, nervous blue. Heavy cruiser configuration. Military escort. Any idea who might be coming to visit? Morrison asked. Zephyra was silent for a long moment, her galactic eyes distant. Probably my family, she said finally. Or their representatives. The marriage contract would have been monitored by automated systems. When it was fulfilled under unusual circumstances, it would have triggered diplomatic protocols. Are we in trouble? Marcus asked. I don't know, Zephyra admitted. This is unprecedented. The ethereal reach has never had to deal with one of their citizens marrying outside the species. The human courier ship arrived first, and within an hour Marcus found himself sitting across from Ambassador Elena Vasquez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who represented the colonial administration's Xeno-Relations Department. Mr. Chen, Vasquez said, reviewing the data on her tablet, you've certainly created an interesting situation. Interspecies marriage with the ethereals wasn't even theoretical until 3 days ago. Is it legal? Marcus asked. Oh, it's perfectly legal, Vasquez replied, both under human law and apparently under ethereal law as well. But the implications are staggering. This could open entirely new avenues for human-ethereal relations. She turned to Zephyra, who sat with perfect posture despite her obvious nervousness. Lady Zephyra, I understand this marriage was arranged to fulfill a family obligation? Yes, Ambassador, Zephyra replied carefully. Though it has become more than that. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Oh? Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks as Zephyra looked at him with what he was learning to recognize as fondness. We've discovered that we work well together, Zephyra said diplomatically. Our partnership has proven beneficial to both parties. Before Vasquez could probe deeper, the station's proximity alarms announced the arrival of the ethereal vessel. Through the observation windows, they could see a magnificent ship that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, its faceted hull catching and refracting starlight in dazzling patterns. The celestial harmony, Zephyra whispered, her skin shifting to a deep purple that Marcus was beginning to associate with strong emotion. My grandmother's flagship. Your grandmother? Morrison asked. Matriarch Selenia of the Ethereal Reach, Zephyra replied. She is formidable. The boarding process for the ethereal delegation was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. The beings who came aboard the station moved with the same fluid grace as Zephyra, but they wore elaborate robes that seemed to shift and flow like liquid light. Their leader was clearly an older female, her opalescent skin bearing intricate patterns that suggested age and authority. Granddaughter, Matriarch Selenia said in accented standard, her melodic voice carrying undertones of disapproval. You have caused quite a disruption in the carefully ordered structure of our society. Zephyra rose and performed what Marcus recognized as a formal bow, her forearms positioned in a complex gesture of respect. Honored grandmother, I acted to preserve the honor of our family line. By marrying an alien. Selenia's gaze shifted to Marcus, studying him with the intensity of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. This is the human who claims to be your husband? Marcus Chen of Earth, Marcus said, standing and offering what he hoped was an appropriately respectful bow. It's an honor to meet you, Matriarch. Selenia's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught what might have been amusement in her galactic eyes. You show proper courtesy, human, though I confess myself puzzled by this entire situation. Perhaps we could discuss this privately, Ambassador Vasquez interjected diplomatically. Indeed, Selenia agreed, though I am curious to understand how my granddaughter came to be in this situation. Over the next few hours, the full story emerged. Zephyra described the pirate attack, her desperate flight, and her arrival at the mining station. Marcus explained his decision to help her, carefully omitting nothing about their hasty marriage arrangement. Captain Morrison testified about the subsequent pirate attack and the couple's heroic defense of the station. Matriarch Selenia listened to everything with the patience of someone accustomed to hearing complex diplomatic negotiations. When the accounts were finished, she was quiet for a long time. You chose to risk your life to save strangers, she said finally to Marcus. And you, granddaughter, were willing to die beside him rather than let him face danger alone. Yes, honored grandmother, Zephyra replied quietly. Among my people, such choices would indeed be considered illogical, Selenia continued. Yet they are also noble. Perhaps there is more to learn from humanity than our scholars have assumed. She stood and moved to the observation window, gazing out at the stars beyond. The marriage contract has been fulfilled according to law. My family's honor remains intact, but more importantly, I believe my granddaughter has found something that our careful political arrangements could never have provided. What's that? Marcus asked. Selenia smiled, an expression that transformed her stern features. A true partner. Someone who chooses to stand beside her not because of duty or political advantage, but because it is right. She turned back to face them both. I hereby formally recognize this union as legitimate and binding under all ethereal law. Furthermore, I extend an invitation to both of you to visit the ethereal reach as honored guests. Both of us? Marcus asked in surprise. Of course, Selenia replied. You are family now, and I suspect that humanity and the ethereal reach have much to learn from each other. Ambassador Vasquez was already making notes on her tablet, no doubt calculating the diplomatic implications. This could mark a new era in human-ethereal relations. As the formal ceremonies concluded, and the various delegations prepared to depart, Marcus found himself alone with Zephyra in the station's observation deck. The makeshift wedding decorations were still in place, though they looked different now, less like a desperate improvisation and more like the beginning of something beautiful. Do you regret it? Zephyra asked quietly. Your life has become far more complicated because of me. Marcus considered the question seriously. A week ago, he had been alone on a mining station going through the motions of a solitary existence. Now he was married to an alien princess, had been involved in a space battle, and was apparently going to be at the center of a major diplomatic development. No, he said finally. I don't regret it, do you? Zephyra's skin shifted to that warm golden color he was learning to love. I thought I was trading freedom for honor, she said. Instead, I found both. And something I didn't even know I was looking for. What's that? Home, she said simply, moving closer to him. Not a place, but a person. Someone who sees me not as an alliance or a political asset, but simply as myself. As they stood together watching the stars, Marcus realized that their marriage of convenience had become something neither of them had expected. A genuine partnership built on mutual respect, shared courage and growing affection. It wasn't the kind of love story he had imagined as a child, but it was theirs, and that made it perfect. Unprecedented in known space. The first joint human ethereal research facility. The utilitarian corridors now housed elegant ethereal crystalline interfaces alongside robust human engineering systems, creating a unique hybrid technology that was proving more effective than either species had achieved alone. Marcus stood in what had once been the station's observation deck, now converted into a sophisticated laboratory where human adaptability met ethereal precision. Banks of monitoring equipment hummed quietly, while crystalline matrices pulsed with soft light, analyzing data from experiments that would have been impossible for either species to conduct independently. The harmonic resonance of the modified power coupling is exceeding all projections, Zephyra reported, her four hands dancing across both human and ethereal control interfaces with the fluid grace that Marcus had come to find both beautiful and endearing. Efficiency is up 37% from our baseline measurements. That's incredible, Dr. Sarah Kim replied from the human research team that had arrived the previous month. If we can replicate this on an industrial scale, it could revolutionize space travel throughout the galaxy. Marcus smiled as he watched his wife work. Zephyra had blossomed over the past months, her natural scientific curiosity finally given free rein without the constraints of ethereal social expectations. She had become the bridge between two very different approaches to technology and knowledge, translating concepts that neither species could have understood alone. The colonial administration wants to establish 6 more joint facilities, Ambassador Vasquez announced as she entered the laboratory. She had become a frequent visitor as the diplomatic implications of the human-ethereal partnership continued to unfold. And the Ethereal Council has formally approved cultural exchange programs. All because 2 people decided to help each other, Dr. Kim mused. All because one person decided to answer a distress call, Zephyra corrected gently, glancing at Marcus with the fond expression that still made his heart skip a beat. The changes in their relationship had been gradual, but profound. What had begun as a marriage of convenience had evolved into genuine partnership, then friendship, and finally into something deeper that neither of them had expected to find. They worked together with an intuitive understanding that amazed their colleagues, complementing each other's strengths and compensating for weaknesses with seamless cooperation. Speaking of which, Vasquez said, I have news from the ethereal reach. Matriarch Selenia has formally invited you both to attend the Celestial Conclave next month. Marcus raised an eyebrow. The what now? It's the highest governing body of the ethereal reach, Zephyra explained, her skin shifting to an excited silver. They meet only once every 7 years to discuss matters of cosmic importance. For them to invite humans to attend, it's unprecedented, Vasquez finished. They want to hear proposals for expanded cooperation between our species. That evening, Marcus and Zephyra walked through the station's corridors, now lined with flowing ethereal artwork that somehow harmonized perfectly with the industrial human architecture. Their quarters had been expanded and redesigned to accommodate both their needs, a blend of human comfort and ethereal aesthetics that felt like home to both of them. Are you nervous about the conclave? Marcus asked as they settled into their living space, a room that managed to be both cozy and elegant. Terrified, Zephyra admitted, her skin showing subtle patterns of blue and silver that Marcus had learned indicated complex emotions. I will be presenting ideas that challenge thousands of years of ethereal tradition. The concept that emotional connections can enhance rather than hinder logical decision-making goes against everything your people believe, Marcus finished. But you've proven it works. We've proven it works. Zephyra moved closer to him, her 4 hands reaching out to take his 2 in the gesture that had become natural to them both. We have indeed. But convincing others, we'll do it together, Marcus said simply, just like everything else. Zephyra's skin shifted to that warm golden color that never failed to make Marcus smile. Yes, she said softly. Together. Over the following weeks, they prepared their presentation for the Celestial Conclave, documenting how their partnership had led to technological breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. They compiled data showing that human intuition and adaptability, when combined with ethereal precision and knowledge, created solutions that were both elegant and robust. The key insight, Marcus explained to their research team during a practice session, is that efficiency isn't always about eliminating variables. Sometimes the unpredictable elements are what make a system truly effective. Like human emotions? Dr. Kim asked. Like human stubbornness? Zephyra said with what Marcus had learned to recognize as her version of amusement. Marcus's refusal to accept impossible situations has led to our most significant breakthroughs. And Zephyra's willingness to think beyond traditional ethereal constraints, Marcus added, has opened possibilities that pure human ingenuity never could have reached. The day of their departure for the ethereal reach arrived with surprising fanfare. What had begun as a desperate marriage between strangers had become a symbol of hope for interspecies cooperation throughout human space. Messages of support poured in from colonies across the galaxy, while ethereal ships began arriving in human space for the first time in recorded history. As they prepared to board the transport that would take them to ethereal space, Captain Morrison arrived for a final farewell. You know, she said to Marcus, when I first got that distress call about your alien wife, I thought you'd lost your mind. Maybe I had, Marcus replied. Sometimes losing your mind is the sanest thing you can do. Take care of each other out there, Morrison said. You're representing more than just yourselves now. The journey to the ethereal reach took them through regions of space that no human had ever seen. Zephyra served as their guide, pointing out the wonders of her people's territory, worlds of living crystal, space stations that existed in perfect harmony with their stellar environments, and ships that moved through space like schools of luminescent fish. It's beautiful, Marcus said as they approached the ethereal homeworld, a planet that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Yes, Zephyra agreed, but now I see it differently than I did before. Beauty without warmth, elegance without joy. My people have achieved perfection, but perhaps at the cost of happiness. Maybe that's what they need to learn from humans, Marcus suggested. And perhaps what humans need to learn from us is that some forms of chaos can be channeled into greater order, Zephyra replied. Balance, as you humans say. The Celestial Conclave was held in a vast crystalline amphitheater that seemed to capture and amplify starlight from the surrounding cosmos. Thousands of ethereal delegates filled the space, their robes shimmering with patterns that Marcus was beginning to understand, represented complex philosophical and political positions. When their time came to speak, Marcus and Zephyra stood together before the assembled multitude. Zephyra spoke first, explaining in formal ethereal the theoretical framework for human ethereal cooperation. Then Marcus presented the practical results, the concrete achievements that their partnership had already produced. The question before this conclave, Zephyra concluded, is not whether our species should work together, but whether we can afford not to. The galaxy is vast and full of challenges that no single species can face alone, but together, combining our strengths and learning from our differences, we can achieve things that neither of us ever imagined possible. The silence that followed their presentation seemed to stretch forever. Then slowly one delegate stood and began to emit the harmonic tones that Marcus had learned constituted ethereal applause. Others joined in, until the entire amphitheater resonated with sounds like singing crystals. Later, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the ethereal capital, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun with a desperate plea for help had become something that might reshape the relationships between species across the galaxy. "Do you think we'll succeed?" Zephyra asked, leaning against him in the gesture of affection that had developed naturally between them. "I think we already have," Marcus replied. "Everything else is just details." Zephyra's skin shifted to that brilliant silver that meant joy and determination. "Yes," she said. "We have found something more precious than honor or efficiency or even survival." "What's that?" "Each other," she said simply, "and the proof that different can be better than same, that strange can be stronger than familiar, and that love can indeed conquer the vast distances between worlds." As they watched the alien stars wheel overhead, Marcus marveled at how a routine maintenance day on a mining station had led to this moment. He had answered a distress call from a stranger and found a partner for life. He had taken a calculated risk and discovered that sometimes the best decisions were the ones that seemed impossible at the time. Zephyra had been desperate and alone when she pleaded with him for marriage. Now she was neither desperate nor alone, and neither was he. They had found in each other something that neither of their species had thought to look for. Not just compatibility, but completion. The Mar,